I'm Celine Williams, and welcome to the Leading Through Crisis podcast, a conversation series exploring resiliency and leadership in challenging times. My guest today is Rosi Bremec, COO of Game Lounge. Welcome, Rosi.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here.
I'm very excited to talk to you today. We had an extremely interesting pre-recording chat, which is always the case. I'm very lucky I get to talk to cool people on this podcast. You are definitely one of them. And before we dive into some of what we talked about, I always start with a question. You know, the name of the podcast is Leading Through Crisis. When you hear the phrase leading through crisis, what does that mean to you, or what comes up for you?
Well, I actually thought you contacted me because maybe you've heard about the crisis we went through. Um, so yeah, I have a story around that. When I started with Game Lounge, I started as a consultant in data strategy, and I was offered the position of COO of the group of companies, and that was in March. 2 months prior to that, we had December prior to that, we had our best month ever.
Amazing.
It was a really good month. However, throughout the Christmas holidays, Google rolled out an update. They do this on a regular basis that basically knocked down our revenues for months. So we were doing extremely well. And then as soon as I came in, which I had nothing to do with, obviously. uh,
Timing, fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Revenue. So I was COO of the group. The group is no longer, but Game Lounge was the main company in the group.
Yep.
And as for the whole of 2023, yeah. For the whole of 2023, our revenues just kept declining. We got hit pretty hard. It's something that happens in the affiliate business. I mean, we're not the only ones that this happens to. And come, May, at first we're thinking, okay, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna recover. It didn't happen, right? So we had to make some really difficult decisions. We had to think of a way to first of all, we had to stop recruiting. We had to halt pay reviews. We had to take a lot of cost optimization measures. We went through a whole restructuring, reorganization that did lead to some redundancies. And we took an approach. We changed our whole strategy, basically. So we prior to this, we had a kind of a big content. It's all about content. So we had a big content team that was kind of like one size fits all. And what we did then, we said, right, we want to be more specific in each market. So we created teams, full, little mini teams for each market. And because we felt that each market has its own culture, it's its own, uh, um, approach to gambling. It's everything. Languages, obviously. And so we did that, and it was hard. Everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change, right? So, yeah, it was really hard on the team to adapt, but we slowly started to pick up, and towards the end of a year, so we spent a whole year practically until it started to like stop and level out, and that we weren't dipping anymore. And then there was a change of leadership. So our CEO, who was the founder, stepped down. We brought in a new CEO called his name is Richard Dennis, exceptional CEO. The group was kind of dissolved, and they offered me the role of COO of Game Lounge. So then we formed a new team, like a new management team, and under Richard's leadership, we then led the company to through a phenomenal year. We are still closing our books, but we're looking at like 30% growth in net profit. So it's been a phenomenal year. We've smashed all our targets. We've had towards the last part of the month, we've had all-time highs each month. The team has done an amazing job, and it shows resilience, and it shows, if we took our EMPS score at the beginning of the year, it was pretty low. Morale was pretty low, and it was change in leadership. There was uncertainty, but then our last one was, times five was 52. So we obviously did a lot of work on the culture, on the inclusivity, on trust, on transparency. I mean, we're not perfect, there's still a lot we need to do, but we have come through with flying colors, and it's down to the team. I have an amazing team. I say, like, I've had a lot of experience. I've worked in the Middle East, I've worked in the UK, worked in Malta as well. I've never had a team with so many like really smart people without, and I mean, there's no backstabbing or there's such a lovely vibe. We actually have a vibe team as well. It's called. There's such a lovely, incredibly intelligent bunch, and I'm truly grateful for their tenacity and their adaptability to all the challenges we've faced in the last 2 years. So yeah, that's my so I thought, literally, when you offered to speak to me on this podcast, I thought maybe you heard the story. But yeah, leading through crisis I had a crash course in it.
Yeah.
I had a crash course. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. You said there were a few words you used, whether it was to describe the people on your team or around the experience, clever, tenacious,
Mhm.
resilient, inclusivity. Like, there were a number of words that you were using there that I think come together to help, or in such, in that kind of special magic way of culture where all of those pieces are part of what allowed you to lead through crisis, that allowed your team to lead themselves through crisis, the new CEO, to, lead the organization and adapt, and all of the things that needed to happen in order to get through the
Yeah.
moment. And the moment being a year, I recognize it's more than just a brief moment.
Mm.
But if you look back at that time, what are some of the key, let's call them lessons, but I'm not married to that word, but some of the key lessons that now you can say that's what helped make this a success, right? Like,
Well, I think we focused on their well-being.
mm,
We also became, like, strategically, we became a little bit boring, and we just focused on what we do best. So, the bright shiny syndrome, I don't know what it's called, that, oh,
yep,
should we do this? That kind of, we said, no, let's just focus on what we do best, focus on core business, and let's get that right. And we organized the team, we tweaked, and we made sure that we had the right people in the right places. We then prioritized their well-being. We actually did a 2-month, 4-day work week experiment throughout the summer. Um, we wanted for it was like for twofold. One, for their well-being, and to see and to give them that extra day. And it turned out, like, we did 2 surveys after, and they came back saying that, Monday they had so much energy, and they were just rearing to go on a Monday in summer, which is fantastic, because usually summer's not the you don't want to be at work a lot of the time.
mm-hmm,
Um,
yep,
and also to see how we can be smarter at work. How can we work smarter? CEOs always, like, how can we be more savvy? How can, and by removing a day out of the week, because everybody's really busy, meetings, everybody's full on. How can you then work smarter? What tools can you use? Do you reduce meetings? Do you reduce the meeting times? Can a meeting become an email or, and so it was kind of a, a kind of test as to see, will productivity drop? We took a chance.
Mhm.
It wasn't, when we came up with the idea, I was a bit like, what if it drops? But productivity didn't drop more than it, August, but August, everybody's on leave. It was just a little bit of a drop, but the feedback was so well received, so well received that we're going to try another experiment in April. And we're going to do a 4-day work week in April. So back to your question, we're prioritizing well-being. I think the human connection is also very, very important. So as a remote COO myself, I do my utmost to make, I visit the Malta office once a month. I have an office here in Marbella. Um, and I do monthly well-being meetings. So in a well-being meeting, it's basically talking about them, and sometimes we slip into like, oh, we talk about work and updates and things, but I'm like, no, let's just focus on you, because I believe that if I focus on them and their well-being and having them feel valued, having the tough conversations, giving them the psychological safety and space to, right, what is bothering you, is, how can I support you in this? I think that opens up the space for them to bring their full selves to work and to reach their full potential, and then productivity and performance are just a byproduct of that. So I think we built a culture around growth. We launched an EVP called Level Up Leap Forward. We also invested a huge amount into a bespoke training program. We worked with a company called Mindbeat, and we set, they worked with us and we said, look, we want our team, we want our heads and our managers to have the tough conversations, to be able to open up that space for their teams, to set goals and set proper goals,
Mm.
um, to prioritize their growth and their impact into the company. So I think we brought the human connection side to it. Also the work smarter, work savvier. Like, how could we work in a more productive way, in a more, less repetitive way. I think we did a lot of that, and I personally believe that was our secret sauce.
I love that you started by saying that you kind of focused on your core business, so almost simplifying the overall
Mm,
strategy
yeah.
to be able to then expand in the ways that were supportive of the people you had, the right people, and all of that, to see the
Hmm.
long term. I recognize it's been a year and a half. It's not like it's 10, but you see the longer term impact of that and benefits of that, as
Mm,
opposed to, I think a lot of times leaders get very easily distracted by the shiny objects, and they then, even if they don't know where to focus to support people. And that simplification, to
mhm.
me, when I hear it, I'm hearing it for the first time, that really stands out, is really just
Yeah.
simplifying and focusing.
Yeah, yeah. We have to, in our business, we need great content. We need traffic into our sites. We need market specialists. We need to tailor our sites to the market specific needs. And we need to get the right people to do that. We need SEO experts. You know, SEO is very fundamental in our business. So we built a robust, really really good leader for that team, focused on that. It was just, let's not get distracted. And you know, it, ideas come in, and we welcome them, because you know, we've now actually set up a kind of a separate section called GLX. And that's where it's kind of like an innovation hub. And that's where all our ideas are and all our new products are. So one is, we to diversify from being so dependent on Google. And so we have our a couple of products. So we have Kicker, which is a sub-affiliation product. We have BetLooker, which is an AI-driven betting tool, betting prediction tool. And we've got a couple of others. And so we segregated almost a hub so that all the experimentation and all the ideas are there. And we've even when we report, you know, they're separate. So we could continue to, because the core business needs to, you know, be efficient, be optimized all the time. The innovation hub, it's got a different set of KPIs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we try things out here in GLX, I mean, it's just new, so we haven't it's not that mature yet. But the idea is that when we try things out on a smaller scale here, not in the core business, and then when they do work and we do find that they're beneficial, then we move them into the core business. You know, so we've left a space for innovation, but we've kind of put it in a little space on its own.
Yeah.
And that keeps us focused on core. You know, we have and also ahead of the curve, you know, because we want to be, you know, at the forefront of new tools, of new innovations, we want to do that, but you don't want to be doing that in the core business on the fly. I'd rather have that on a separate note.
You don't want it to be to the detriment of the core business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it has, you know, it previously, we have kind of amalgamated everything, and you know, and then you don't know, it's really hard to focus to find out what's working and what's not, because everything's all in one. You
Yeah.
know, so now we've got a lot, we've got become much more savvy, and separated them. They each have their own set of goals and KPIs, and they're kind of like a separate unit.
So it sounds like you would be able to, it would help you parse out really clear, good data that
Yeah.
isn't messy and confusing, which
Mhm.
can happen otherwise, right? It's
Yeah.
very, we talk a lot about, leaders talk a lot about the importance of data, right? The
Mm,
importance of the information that we get. We need more data. We have to have clear data. And yet, in many cases, in many organizations, they're not set up to find, seek out good data. They don't
yeah.
even really know what they're measuring. Sometimes you were talking about KPIs, the number of people that use the language, but they don't really measure it. We were talking before about remote work, where people are like, but if I don't see them for 8 hours a day, I don't know what they're doing. That's not a KPI. Seeing someone
No,
is not, right? So it
no.
sounds like you have the opportunity with the way it's been set up to actually be able to measure the right things that are going to help you make better decisions.
Yeah, yeah. So I started off as, you know, I was consulting with them as a data strategist. And data strategy is when you make sense of data. It's not just, it's when everybody knows, the whole point is that everybody knows how they're contributing to the big picture. So everybody has to have some kind of measure, um, as to how to contribute. So okay, yeah, you report revenue, but like if I'm a content writer, or if I'm an SEO specialist, how am I directly, um, how am I contributing to the company's revenue?
Yeah.
And so you break, so a data strategy, you break it down, and you make meaningful sense out of data, and you use it to impact, to influence, not look at it in the past as, oh, that's what we did last week. Okay. So and that's how, and I think that helped me as well, because I got to meet, before I became COO, I got to meet everyone, and I got to sit with them and see how their process is, what they're doing, what data they're looking at, how we can improve it. And I saw, that's where I saw a lot of the gaps. And I worked closely with the, the CT, the CD, it was the CDO at that time, Chief Data Officer, and the team. And we did an amazing, we had started amazing um uh kind of project initiatives to make this data a lot more strategic and impactful. And they've continued on that road, and we've been able to, with this fully. So what you talked about, remote and hybrid, you need a lot of trust these days. So leaders, um, we have to, first of all, we have to stop talking about this return to office. I feel like it's like you're talking about floppy disks in the 80s. It's just so yesterday. And the more it just deters people. People can work for anyone in any part of the world now. They have so many options. Before, if you lived in Canada, you probably work in some kind of office around the radius of your house. Now you could work anywhere. And so to retain talent, and to also be able to reach the goals that you set, because we set some challenging goals, you have to really instill trust. You have to get your data right. And you also have to, I think, emphasize on the human connection aspect, um, because remote work can be so isolating.
Mm.
Like for example, every new recruit that comes in, I ask HR to book 15-30 minutes with them, just so I can, because I believe that if I was in the same office, I would see them and say, "Hey, you're new, so how are you? Who are you?" Like, and I spend 15-30 minutes, it depends, just asking them what do they do? What's their hobbies? I found out that one girl, I posted a LinkedIn post. One girl, she works for us part-time, but she lives in the north of Spain. She's got like 15 chickens. She lives on a farm. She only does part-time with us, but I found out a lot of really interesting things. Another lady lives in South Africa. She moved from the UK. She got fed up with the weather, and she wanted to give her children more beach life and more sun, and she's moved her. I wouldn't have known these things if I don't spend the time with them.
Hmm.
And I just think that once you bring in that human connection, you give them the opportunity, you give them the opportunity to trust you, and they feel valued, and
Hmm.
then productivity and performance just come as a byproduct of that.
Mm. So I have two questions
Mhm.
that came to mind when you were saying this. I'm going to pose them. You can answer however, in whatever order. The first one is, how do you continue to create that connection beyond that like initial 15 or 30 minutes when people are remote full time, right? So, hybrid, some people are in the office occasionally. There's more opportunity for them, for you to connect when you're there. But for the people that really are
Mhm.
fully remote, how do you continue, whether, and I'm not, and Rosie, I want to be clear, by no means am I saying you personally as the only person, but
Yeah.
how do we create, what are some of the ways that you find that help create that connection, whether it's between team members or et cetera, when they are fully remote. And then
Yeah.
the second thing, and it may be related, which is why I'm putting them together, but order is irrelevant. When you were talking about trust, what are some
Mm.
of the ways that you have found that help, people trust the organization, the leaders in that kind of hybrid environment, and vice versa? Because as I mentioned this before we hit record, is that's the thing I hear most when leaders are talking about remote work, is that lack of trust, right? They may not be saying it, but they're like, I don't know what they're doing with their time. I don't, how do I
Yeah.
know? Right. So it's
Yeah.
built in there.
Yeah. Well, there are, there's the usual, like we bring everybody together once a year. So
Yes.
we bring everybody to Malta. One year we went to Greece. Everybody meets once a year.
Yep.
Anything we organize, whether it's a conference, or like, for example, last week we refurbished one of our floors and we kind of inaugurated it. We did a little breakfast for everyone, and we brought a big screen, and we invited all the remote, everybody that's not there, so all the remote workers as well. And we did a bit of a speech, and we made them feel part of that, new office kind of setup as well. What we do, HR organizes a lot of conferences. We do them remote, so you can either be in person or remote. What we've also done, and I guess it could be something that people take for granted, but both myself and my HR director, Henriette, insist upon quarterly assessment reviews. And people are like, oh my God, like every 3 months, really? But it forces people to sit down, think about how their direct reports can how they're contributing, how can they do better. On the other side, the employee that will also fills in a self-assessment.
Hmm.
And then after that, they have a meeting together. So every 3 months, your manager stops and takes and focuses on you and takes time to gives you that space to air and to give you the feedback. We also gather 360 feedback from the peers as well, so that comes into the table. And it and that's across the board. So we don't really, and I think we don't really differentiate between whether you're in the office or not. Because on any good day, most of our people are in Malta, for example. On a good day, it's like 35, 40 people, you know. Sometimes we organize, some party or something, and more of them turn up, but most of people are still comfortable working from home, or some people love to come to the office. And I think not differentiating between that, and also making sure that there's that framework where there's that continuous feedback loop, with their peers, with their manager, and it's you're sat down, and you have the space to air anything that's festering. You hear, you know, what you're what how you can grow and how you can improve. I mean, I've worked for companies that did that, and I know that I grew a lot in the years that I've spent with that company, and I've worked with companies that didn't
Mm-hmm.
do that, and it was a different story. And I want to make sure that um, we foster a culture where people are open and honest and transparent, and people grow. Because when you get feedback, and when you're given the chance to express, what you think and what you want, and how you're contributing, I think it just creates such a magical little um, atmosphere, and culture. And that goes across, whether you're hybrid, whether you're remote. whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Malta, whether you're in Spain, it really doesn't matter. I think um, some people also ask me, like, how do you feel being a woman? Um, I'm the only woman in the C suite, for example, and I'm just like, I don't even bring that to the table. I don't. I use my skills as there's feminine instincts, and just like the men use theirs, but I don't go in and feel that, oh, I'm a woman amongst all these men, or I just don't bring it to the table. And I think that cascades across the organization, you know. Um, it's just a really uh, inclusive culture, which I'm really proud of.
And I think you should be. I think inclusivity is incredibly important. And often when we think about inclusivity, it's limited. And I mean that. And I don't, and just because of people's experiences, right? So they might be like, well, it's very important that we are thoughtful about, gender, for example, and be inclusive of gender, but then they don't think about the inclusivity of remote workers, which is a different, is just as important. It's different. It's going to look different. How you ensure that it's there is different, but it's not an either or. It really
No.
is. It sounds like you're very intentional about
Yes.
what this looks like across the board. So,
Yes.
including the opportunity for remote people to participate in the opening of the office, whatever that was, in ensuring that there are structures in place that, you know, operationally, that every 3 month check-ins, that there's an intentionality behind it so that they are like everyone else included the way it is and
Yeah.
the way things are. And my guess would be that there's the similar intentionality in all of the ways that an organization can be inclusive. And that does partly depend on, the reality is that it does partly depend on the C suite, on the executive team, right? So if you are
Yes.
the only woman at the table, the men who are at the table have to be as committed to that idea as you
Yeah.
are, right? It's not
Yeah.
just you. But
Hmm.
when it is intentional and there is that commitment, it does cascade down.
Yes, it does. And something else that I think maybe we're not bringing to light, and it's very much resonates in Game Lounge, is that, um, I mean, I've been working for over 30 years, and back in the day, it, it was more like, and I don't mean to generalize, but usually if there's children that needs to be picked up from school, it's the woman, they could both be working, but the woman kind of was had more of the tendency to drop it, or to have a job, reduced hours, whatever, to go and do that. Today we're seeing that, you know, um, the guys are the men are partnering with very successful, we have successful men employees who have successful partners or wives, as well, and they also need to feel comfortable saying, look, um, my child is sick today. My wife and I have organized ourselves that today I'm taking care of them, and or we have people that go pick up their children, guys that go pick up their kids, and then they continue working from home. For example, sometimes they come to the office in the morning, or sometimes we're in a meeting and one of the kids come up and sit on their laps, because they've just woken up from their afternoon nap. So I think inclusivity also comes in with, it's a new age of very much shared parenting, um, different from where I started, and that needs to be okay too, and intentional too. So I have people in my team that have very successful partners and wives that, and they share their responsibilities equally, and I really respect that. Um, you know,
Yeah.
really respect that, and I make sure that, if there were times back in my day where I couldn't go and pick up my son from school because, the office environment in those days where are you going? Like you've got to clock out. You can't just continue working from home, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I missed a lot of that. I missed a lot of that. And so I would never want that for anyone else. I think that's something that, it's part of our culture as well that, it's fine. Go pick up the kids, settle them down and continue from home or so I think there's that aspect as well. Not just women, but we're also supporting women and equal and shared partner and shared parenting as well. I think that's something that not talked about is not enough.
You're supporting humans in whatever
Yeah,
their choices are, however they're living and operating, because there's not
exactly.
one right way to do it.
No,
There's not one way to human that works for everyone that's the
no,
same. So that's what everyone does. And that was really the default for a long time, right? Like it
yeah.
was, and it's not
And
that way.
yeah. And also, there are times in your life you could be a really ambitious, let's say, woman. Okay, I'm gonna talk about myself.
Mhm.
But there were times where, your children are young, and you can't really. I mean, I'll talk about that. You can't really advance and grow in your career because you just don't have the bandwidth, right? It's just not. And so it's great that a company can embrace the fact that, right now you're good at what you do. You're not looking to grow, as in expand and take on more people or maybe take on a managerial role. You do what you came at. You're coming in. You're doing what you do best, and then for the time being, that's where you are in your life. Because, for some reason, maybe taking care of a sick parent or a sick relative or a young child or whatever, you just need to come to work, do your thing, be that kind of. I recently read a book. I think it was Radical Candor,
Hmm.
and she talks about rock stars and superstars or something. And there's the rock stars, the people that are there doing, that they're taking care of a part of the company, part of the organization. That they do it, and you don't have to worry about it if they're doing it well. And they don't necessarily want to take on more responsibility at the moment because of where they are in their life. And that is absolutely fine. And and they shouldn't be looked at differently, or that it's just where they are in their life. And maybe when their life circumstances change, they'll come and say, look, okay, now I'm ready. And we'll look into that. Or they just, some people just want to keep doing what they do best, and that's fine.
Yeah. It's not one size fits all.
No, no,
It just isn't.
no. And I think the more we embrace that, and that's where the human connection comes in, because you don't always know these things. If you don't get to know your direct reports, you won't know what keeps them up at night. You won't know. And for them to be able to be open enough to tell you these things,
Mm.
it takes a lot of trust. It takes trust building. It takes being honest and being consistent, and because the more you know of, uh, I don't mean to say like to know their business or anything like that, but you know, the more you know them, I think the better you can serve, and the better that you provide them an environment that they can thrive at whatever point they are in their lives.
I think what you just said is incredibly important. It is truly about providing them the environment that they can thrive in. If you don't
Yes.
have enough context to be able to help create that environment for them, then, and to your point, it's not about knowing all their business, but enough context to create that, to be part of the creation, to co-create that environment, that's really the key, because
Yeah,
everyone is going to thrive in different environments under different
exactly.
circumstances. And
Hmm.
the more we can create environments where people can thrive, the more people we will see thriving in workplaces and really feeling, doing, being their best.
Exactly. So you don't have to clock watch. They don't have to be sitting next to you. They could be anywhere, and they'll give their best because it's just natural.
Because they're set up for success to do exactly that. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Before we wrap up, and I really appreciate this conversation, it was super interesting. I want to ask a question, and that is different question than what I've just asked you, but that is if you look back at the last year, what is something or what are some things that you are most proud of?
I'm proud of how uh, the people that I had, that were under my wing, kind of thing, how they have flourished and grown. And I feel so um, privileged to see the people around me grow and in their leadership skills, in the way they work with their teams, um, and in their own personal growth. I mean, if I think of every one of them, they've all taken such leaps forward. Um, they've all, if I may excuse the pun, leveled up.
Mm.
Like our EVP says, they've all leveled up. And it was a privilege to watch and to support and I mean, I'd like to say I had, I played some kind of part in that. But yeah, I think that's what I would say is seeing them grow into the leaders that they've become.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. This was very insightful, and I really appreciated
Welcome.
how much of your story and your experience you shared. That's always extremely resonant. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today on the Leading Through Crisis podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a minute to rate and review us on your podcast app. If you're interested in learning more about any of our guests, you can find us online at www.leadingthroughcrisis.ca.